What is going on, everybody? This is Brian Mazik of the Fight Guys. I'm also a Forbes contributor, and I'm here with my man Peter Kahn. Got some of the same tags. What's going on, Peter?
What's happening?
All right, nothing much, man. It is fight o'clock somewhere.
8 o'clock. That's right.
So we are going to talk some boxing as usual. Welcome to Fight Guys Weekly. And so on the agenda today, well, first of all, before I even say that, what's going on? What do you have
So
going on?
it's funny that you said our favorite new catchphrase. It's 5 o'clock
That's right.
because today I decided to living in South Florida in the Miami area.
Hmm.
Uh, at any given moment, you can say, okay, you know what? I'm going to the beach today.
Okay.
And I said to my wife, we're going to the beach. And I said, I need to just go sit on the beach for a little bit. We're going to the beach. We went to the beach, middle of the day. And then we had lunch, like a late lunch right after. And we're at this really nice seafood. It's like this, it's some, I don't even know what it's called actually, but it's really good. And we're sitting there and we're eating. And she looks up and she says, "Story of my life."
Hmm.
What do you think was on the TV?
Um.
Boxing.
Yeah, I was gonna say like Rocky or something.
No, boxing.
Okay.
I don't know who was fighting. It wasn't,
Uh,
it was something international.
okay.
I think I caught a glimpse of Chris Eubanks Jr.
Okay.
Okay. But she's like, "Story of my life." I'm like, it's 5 o'clock
Right. It's 5 o'clock somewhere.
somewhere. And this was like probably like 4 p.m. Eastern.
Well. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm
So
with you.
that's so, that was it was apropos. Like
It.
her comment was apropos. She's like, she looks up, she goes, "Story of my life."
That's right.
And she picked a restaurant. So it's like it wasn't.
Right. It's not my fault. Like.
But in my mind, I was like, it's 5 o'clock somewhere.
That's right.
And
That's in
and that's just the truth.
Silk the Shocker voice. It ain't my fault.
Exactly.
So I don't know. All right. So man, I don't know. Like I'm still trying to get my schedule together. It's been all over the place, like upside down. For what it's weird. It's like I do my best work, I think, like late, like after everybody goes to sleep or whatever. But then I feel bad because I'm up all night and you just off with everybody and the whole nine. So it's kind of weird in that way. But I was sitting up and I was listening to some music today, right? And I was really, I don't know what I was feeling, super like old school hip hop, and I don't know, depends. Old school hip hop is defined differently depending on who you're talking to, but for me, that's like late '80s
Right.
to the
For me,
mid
it's
'90s.
like KRS-One.
Right.
It would be Eric B and Rakim. You don't like them at all.
Yeah, right. Well, anybody that knows me knows that Rakim is my favorite
Right. But
rapper.
to me that's like that would be old school.
Yeah, that is old school. I wasn't even that far back. I was like in the late '90s. I was listening to Nori's album, his first solo album with
Right.
Banned from TV on it. Then I asked somebody on Twitter. I was like, "Hey y'all, what is your favorite Swiss beat produced song?" So that started a little conversation, but it was pretty
Right.
interesting. So that got me through the middle of the day. So, but they didn't come here to hear us talk about hip hop.
Right.
They came in to hear us talk about boxing. So let's
There's a lot
get
going
in.
on. Thank God
It
for boxing. There's a lot. I mean, there's a lot going on.
There's a lot. There's a
Good and
lot.
bad.
Yeah, good and bad. So you got the Canelo Sergey Derevyanchenko
Hmm.
situation. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the Sergey Kovalev hot mess that
Hmm.
is swirling.
Right.
And we
I
can
heard
talk
I
about,
heard I heard he allegedly he was taken off a plane or something like that.
yeah, he was he took off before they could take off. So there's also what's next for Gervonta Davis.
Right.
I want to find out, what do you think is a better opponent? I'll tell you who I think is a better opponent for him if you had to judge between Leo Santa Cruz, Gary Russell Jr., or Tevin Farmer.
Hmm.
Um, and then what's next for Ramirez and Hooker after their fantastic a junior welterweight unification fight that we talked about a
Right.
little bit. We'll talk about also this week coming up in boxing. We got a couple good fights. And one of the last things I want to talk about, which is happening, is a lot of conversation around it right now, is the Joshua-Ruiz rematch. They're
Hmm.
talking a lot about where that might take place, where it won't take place. So we'll get into that as well. All right, so let's start off with the Canelo Sergey Derevayanchenko situation. Our friend Mike Coppinger has been
Hmm.
kind of all over this story today, and not just today, just
Right.
period.
I mean, in
Like
general.
in general, right? So, Cop has definitely made himself the Adrian Wojnarowski of boxing. So if you follow the NBA, then if Woj said it, you can kind of believe it. But earlier today, actually Keith Idek tweeted this first. He said before approving the Derevayanchenko as an opponent for Canelo's next fight, October 26th, the Zone boss John Skipper, who
Hmm.
also dropped his request that Canelo guarantee that he'd fight Golovkin in his following fight if the Derevayanchenko were approved. So the
Right.
negotiations are ongoing this afternoon, and then followed that up by saying, as part of the Triple G no longer being tied to the Derevayanchenko approval, industry sources say that Canelo Alvarez agreed to take less money
Then it's
than his
35 million.
guaranteed
Yeah.
35 million from the zone. So
Right.
what say you about that?
So let's just take a step back
Hmm.
and let's go a few weeks ago.
Okay.
Right. A few weeks ago, um, the talk was that Canelo was still trying to get Kovalev to the table.
Right.
And then Kovalev went and made his fight against Anthony
Yard, yard,
Yard. Okay.
yard. Yeah.
And I still don't know the proper pronunciation.
It's yard.
I've
I
heard, is
actually
the
messed.
Yard?
Yeah, it is yard. I thought
Okay.
I thought it was yard A too. I thought it was yard A.
Okay.
But it's yard. When and I'm going by that based off of the way I hear the announcers and the people who cover boxing in the UK pronounce
Hmm.
his name. So
Okay.
I
There
would
you go.
assume I would
Sure.
assume they're, kind of in touch with that.
So if you remember back then, we had some, some information out there that we had seen that the only two people that DAZN had approved
Hmm.
for Canelo for September 14th were Kovalev
Hmm.
or Triple G.
Right.
So then Kovalev, we even did a video
Hmm.
about Golden Boy using Mungia as a smokescreen
Right.
to get to the real target, which was trying to bring Kovalev back to the table. Kovalev goes and makes the yard fight. That kind of leaves Canelo sort of in no man's land, with his only option at the time being Triple G, right? If he
Right.
was going to skip right to that, but then the, I mean, I don't even remember. Is it the IBF who mandated, who made the
The
mandatory?
Derevayanchenko was IBF.
Right. So then they come out and mandate that
Hmm.
Canelo has to fight him, right?
Right.
And then if Canelo doesn't fight him, then potentially that was going to be a Triple G fight, right?
Exactly. Hmm.
So then we hear that Canelo's stepping off of that September 14th date. They said it was because he couldn't find an opponent. I mean, now hearing that might be in October, this fight.
Yeah, October 26th or something
Right.
like that, I think it
So
was.
you're asking me what I think.
Mhm.
I don't know what to think. I think that this is what I think. I think that I don't know why we don't hear Demetrius Andrade's name.
Mhm. It's like
I
he
don't
doesn't
know if,
exist.
like, he doesn't exist. He's been on the show with us. I don't understand it. Um, okay. So now Canelo's gonna go fight a guy that lost to a guy that he just beat.
Yeah,
That's basically what they're gonna sell.
that's what they're telling us.
Right. So look, I like the zone. I like what they're doing over there. I like their big picture. Okay. I like that they have Canelo and Triple G and Andre. They have some really good fighters.
Mhm.
Joshua. Okay. They have good fighters. But I think that there needs to be a little bit more leeway. What
Mhm.
I don't understand, and the reason I don't understand is because I don't work for Golden Boy, and I don't work for Matchroom, and so I really, I don't really know what they're trying to do, but I simply don't understand why the pool of potential talent that Canelo that's being approved isn't being approved.
Mhm.
But then I don't understand why they're coming off of the Triple G mandate as well, because I don't know if that's a Triple G thing.
Or
I
if it's
don't,
a
you know what I mean?
Canelo thing.
Here's the thing. Eventually, it's just going to lose steam
Hmm.
and it's going to lose interest, because now my question is, who's Triple G fighting? Because look, we know that the whole Munguia situation, which honestly, he's not a middleweight, he's still a junior middleweight. He's still a junior middleweight champion. They're going to make the Jesse Vargas fight because
Exactly.
he wanted no part of my guy Dennis Hogan
Hmm.
in a rematch. Okay, we'll have an announcement next week on Hogan,
Hmm.
and what he's going to be doing. But it's not, it's not Munguia. So what I'm saying is, really Canelo's the pound for pound top guy in the sport right now, right?
I mean,
Maybe.
definitely from an interest and a popularity standpoint, if you
Right.
mixed everything together, yeah, for sure.
So what I'm saying is this: if you're gonna do this Triple G fight again, why not just do it? Like, what are we waiting for? Do the belts really matter?
Clearly not. I mean, because it
So he's gonna fight a
feels.
mandatory?
I mean, I think I don't think he's fighting Derevianchenko because he cares that much about the IBF belt. I think if he fights him, he's fighting him because he is the path. He represents the path of least resistance for him.
So let's take a
And
step back.
mhm.
Take a step back. He signs the DAZN deal. He fights Aaron Rodgers, aka Rocky Fielding. Okay. Only guy that looked happy to go down like 4 times with body shots,
Man,
smiling.
it was
Okay.
terrible. It was
And
terrible.
we interviewed him as well prior to that, and he'd already mapped out. He told us, "Hey, look, I'm going straight to Florida. I got the
Yes,
family going to Disney World.
yes.
So how are you gonna do in the fight? I feel great. The family's booked. We're ready to go."
He said, "Booking dot, yeah."
Yeah, exactly. So we saw that fight. Okay, that was a nice layup for Canelo.
Right.
Coming off of the Triple G, the second Triple G fight. Then he fights Danny Jacobs. Excellent matchup.
It was.
Excellent matchup. He beats Danny Jacobs. It was a good fight. He beats Danny Jacobs.
Mhm.
So now he's, I know he probably wanted to fight Kovalev, which, would have been an interesting matchup. But he doesn't mention Andrade, doesn't mention Triple G. Uh, and we've all seen what can happen when you play this waiting game to get the big fight. I mean, we saw what happened to Joshua.
Mm.
I don't know if the same thing's going to happen at Canelo, but what I'm saying is, why not just fight Triple G? Why not just fight Andrade? Like, what are we waiting for?
Yeah,
Like, why is he fighting? Why is he fighting this mandatory?
the mm, I understand. I feel like I understand the Canelo, I mean, the Triple G thing a little bit more than I understand the Andre thing. Just okay, pretending that I don't pay any attention to the fact that Andrade is a heck of a fighter who
Mhm.
is not a super well-known guy, so he represents a risk that is not necessarily worth the reward. Besides all that, I feel like I understand why he wouldn't want to fight Triple G again, because at this point, what else does he have really left to prove against Triple G? That's kind of where I'm thinking. And then also, from what my understanding, I believe Cop and so a couple other people were saying this, he has a sincere dislike for Triple G and doesn't want to like work with him at all. Like that's
Okay,
something that's
but
being
let's not forget something
hmm
about Canelo, and
hmm
it's within Triple G's full right to have harped on. Who failed
hmm
the drug? Who tested positive for clenbuterol?
yeah.
Regardless of the circumstances, regardless of whether it was tainted meat or whatever it was, okay? He tested positive.
hmm
Triple G didn't test positive. Canelo tested positive.
yeah.
Triple G, said things,
Yeah.
rightfully so.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Canelo was suspended 6 months. He was fined. WBC had no choice. They fought. He then won a close decision in the rematch. So what? So he doesn't like Triple G.
Yeah. That I mean, like I said, these are, in my Mila Kunis voice, their words, not mine. This is what they're saying
Right.
that is the
Wait, is
issue.
this the they who they?
This is Mike Coppinger's one,
Right,
and then
right.
there was a few other boxing journalists and publications that were implying that Canelo really is kind of freezing Triple G out. because
Okay.
there,
So,
there's a power thing, and he doesn't care for the guy. So whether he's right or wrong to dislike him, if the fact is that he does dislike him and he has the power and influence to do
right,
this, I think
right.
that's what we see. That's
But
what we may be seeing.
Brian, who's paying the money?
The zone is paying,
Hold on.
yeah,
Who's paying the money?
yeah, the promoter and the streaming service.
But who's giving the promoter the money? The zone.
Yeah, the streaming
Okay.
service.
So who brought Triple G into the mix?
Yeah, I
The zone.
mean,
There
yeah,
had to be some influence as to, hey, guys, this is gonna happen. Now, like you said, Skipper came and said, okay, we're stepping off the mandate that
hmm
after this fight, you got to fight Triple G. And maybe because I don't know, maybe Triple G is going to go in a different direction. Maybe they're going to hear something where he's going to announce something. Maybe who knows? I mean, there could be a lot of reasons why that's taking place, but I don't know. Canelo's going to have to uh, fight compelling fights and keep fighting the best out there in order for people to remain interested in seeing that. I
yeah.
mean, otherwise, I don't want to see him fight a guy that Jacobs beat.
Yeah, I mean, I for me personally, I've said long before, I feel like the best middleweight fight to make is Andrade against Charlo. That's the fight I would love to see. I'd love to see them win, whoever the winner of that fight, then ultimately take on Canelo, or
Mhm.
even take on Triple G, and then the winner of that fight then fight Canelo again. That would be ideal for me.
I
But
mean, Canelo's great.
we know.
It's not about Canelo. Like Canelo's great. Like
No, it's. I
I
don't think
love
it's
Canelo. I
about
love
Canelo.
watching Canelo.
No, I don't think it's about that at all. I'm saying that this whole thing of Canelo running around with Triple G and that's not even the most compelling fight to me. So I understand people saying, well, why not just fight Triple G?
Mhm.
Honestly, that's not even the fight I would like to see most at 160 at all, or at 164 or 168, whatever catch weight they decided to meet. And honestly, the Kovalev thing is somewhat interesting because he's jumping weight classes. But
Right.
I honestly think that Kovalev is popped, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later.
So
But I
Eddie
felt
Hearn,
that even
yeah,
before that.
right,
So
right.
it's I don't know. To me, that's not the Canelo Triple G thing just isn't all that it's not
Does
appealing
yeah.
to me.
Does Matchroom promote Callum Smith?
Yeah, now that's definitely a fight that I don't think that Canelo really wants. 6'3",
Right.
legitimate 168 guy with power and boxing skill. Uh, and he's another one who outside of the UK, nobody knows him. Like people don't really it's not a mainstream type of name. And that's a major risk for Canelo. So, it is, it's 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 a frustrating situation. It really is from a boxing fan standpoint because you have like you talked about, like you mentioned, the biggest name in the sport right now, and it's held up,
Yeah.
you know, over garbage. So, um, I don't know. I mean, let's dip off into the chat for a second and see what we're getting. We got Rodolph Vargas says, "Can we give Canelo a quality opponent, a quality boxer?" Um, I think that that's actually probably the other way around. Can Canelo and his team actually pick a quality boxer for a quality opposition for him to face? I think that's probably more of what's going on. Coy
Andrade.
Bears, Andre
Demetrius
for sure.
Andrade.
Yeah. Coy Bear says, "Thanks for doing this. Being an old sick guy who loves boxing, I just love hearing all the info that you're giving out. Appreciate you watching, Coy, for sure." Um, and Andrew Coda agrees with me. He says that why doesn't Charlo and Boo Boo Andre, why are they begging Canelo for a fight? Those two should fight and then
Yeah, well,
ask
okay,
for a
and
Canelo
so
fight.
yeah, and so should Crawford and Spence. I mean, we know the reason that
Yeah.
that's not happening. So
Honestly,
that
yeah,
I
for
mean,
sure.
yeah, we know that. We'd love to see that, but
Yes.
we'd also like to see Crawford and Spence or, a lot
Yeah.
of other
A whole
fights that
bunch of
we
fights
yeah,
across network and
and promoters.
streaming service and promoter lines. A lot of that is being held up. Um, and Ness
I love this
Mendoza
guy.
is
I
back.
love him. I'm happy he's with us today.
He's back. Says, "What's up, Brian? What's up, chat guys?" He calls us the chat guys. We're the fight
Okay.
guys, but it's only the second show. We'll let you we'll let you get even with us. All right. So let's go. The next thing we want to talk about today is this Kovalev mess.
Yes.
So, according to Mike Coppinger, um,
Sources.
Sergey Kovalev, sources. Mike Coppinger's quoting sources, of course, because obviously he wasn't present.
Right.
Uh, Sergey Kovalev was pulled off of a plane for allegedly
Hmm.
groping a woman, kissing her, and throwing money at her.
Wow.
So this is, like I said, this is allegedly. So we have to make sure that we say that, but we also have to make sure that we mention this is not the first time
Right.
that Kovalev has had these kinds of allegations. He dealt with this, but right before his last fight. So it's a lot of there's some continuity to some of these stories that are coming out,
Hmm.
but doesn't mean that they're true. But we do have to say that this isn't the first allegation that has come his way. So
I
the
mean,
one,
look, according. Go
mm,
ahead. Sorry,
no,
bro.
I was going to say one of the first things that I thought about when I saw this or when I heard about this was, what does this mean for the rest of his career? Like, even beyond the fact of this is horrible criminal activity, and if it's true, and we could be talking about somebody losing their freedom, right? But even assuming or even thinking about if he somehow is exonerated of these charges, right?
Mhm.
Based off of what
Which
this
okay, but
report,
you gotta kind of go back. You're talking
right?
about the charges that are still pending in California.
Yeah, I'm talking about the charges that would be pending from what allegedly happened at the airport or when he was removed from the plane.
He wasn't arrested, no charges.
You- Okay, all right,
So
no
what,
charge.
what I'm so what I'm saying is it was a disturbance call,
Hmm.
no charges, no arrest. So that's not going to happen.
Right.
But this could be used against him in the case he has pending in California.
Well, if there's no charges, do we could it would it? I mean, is it likely that it would be admissible? I mean, I'm
Um.
not sure.
So yeah, I'm just saying that I think that because reading the article that Mike Coppinger wrote in the
Hmm.
Athletic,
Hmm.
he referenced a report that was created at the airport,
Hmm.
and apparently he had a quote from the Broward Sheriff's Office
Right. Okay.
acknowledging that there was a disturbance call. I don't remember. I mean, I read what I whatever he wrote, but
Hmm.
there were no actual formal charges, and of course, everyone's assuming that he was, intoxicated, but that wasn't part of the actual story that he wrote.
Right.
But that come on, it's the internet. The internet's going to assume it's
Right.
based on one's history
Yes.
or alleged history that that look. The bottom line is it seems problematic
It
for
seems
him,
problematic. Yes, for sure.
especially this close to a fight. Even if the fight is in his hometown in Russia, he's still fighting
Hmm.
Anthony Yard.
Yes, because there's nothing
If
there's been no information that this has been canceled, postponed, or anything
right.
of that nature.
I mean, even as a distraction, right? Like even putting yourself in that situation while you're 6 weeks out. Apparently this happened on July 15th.
Yes,
So, I mean,
and the
6
fight.
weeks,
What's the fight? Is
24th,
August
24th.
24th, right? Right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so you're like 6 weeks out and you're having,
having
these type of
disturbances.
issues. Like why would you be removed from an airplane?
Yeah,
So,
unless he's really no, that wouldn't even. I was going to say.
what are the guys in the chat think?
Well, he's not a major favorite in the chat. Let's just put it that way. Uh, I mean, if you really
We're
look
being
at,
we're being kind right now.
right, if you really look at Kovalev where he is in his career, right? I think he's about to
Right.
be 37 years old. Um, he has not looked the same since losing to Andre Ward.
Twice.
Twice, has looked very vulnerable, very beatable. Even when our friend Buddy McGirt
Hmm.
put him back together again, so to speak,
Right.
in the rematch against Eliter Alvarez, he still didn't look like quote unquote the crusher anymore,
Right.
right?
Right.
Looked like a totally different guy. He almost looked like a boxer forced to protect a weak chin.
Right.
That's almost what he looked like. And that was never his MO. So now when you factor in this other aspect of things that are going on, that seems like it even further weakens him as a fighter. I mean, I think you made this reference when we talked about it offline. If you got any money at all that you're looking to wager, you probably are going to put it all on Anthony Yard, because
Yeah.
if there's ever been a guy that doesn't look like they're ready to fight in less than a month,
Right.
it's Sergey Kovalev.
Especially against a guy like Yard who still remains to be seen, but apparently he can crack.
He can punch. He's
So
athletic. You know, we don't know how well he takes a punch because I don't think he's really been in
right,
there
but
with guys like
Kovalev has to bring
Tessa.
his A game. Kovalev
Yeah.
has to be vintage Kovalev. He can't be a guy that I think we learned with Ward
Hmm.
and the first fight with Alvarez that you give this guy a little pressure, you take him deep, and all of a sudden he kind of runs out of gas.
And the thing of it is you have to ask yourself, was that always the case?
He was just getting
Or
rid of guys early.
I mean, you have to ask yourself, was that always the case? Or was it a is it a situation where lifestyle has started to catch up to him?
I think
And
Kovalev. I think Kovalev in
mhm,
the ring, right, was like a Mike Tyson. He was like a bully,
mhm,
and I think a lot of guys feared him too,
okay,
and he could punch.
mhm,
So I think that Ward. I mean, look, the only two people to beat him were Ward and Alvarez, and he avenged the loss to Alvarez. And
right.
the first Ward fight was close.
First,
I
and
mean,
yeah,
it
because he
was a
dropped
very close
Ward.
fight.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a very close fight.
Mhm.
I just think it's more of like a mental thing with Kovalev, but he also is aging.
Yes.
And so, we got to still see what he has left. But these distractions outside the ring, they can't be. I mean, they can't be positive.
Yeah, these are not positives. Whether he's cleared of these allegations or whatever, they're not positive. They don't help him in any way.
Yeah, I mean, I
Uh,
don't think he's not cleared of them. Whatever happened under eyewitnesses and police. They just chose that he didn't commit a crime.
yeah, well, but I don't know what the statute of limitations is, but I'm quite sure if the female that is involved here,
Right.
who is making the accusations, if she were to press charges, then there would be charges involved. And if these things that are being alleged actually happen, these are
Right.
crimes. So then we talk about it going to a different
Yeah.
level. So we don't know
Yeah.
everything that's going to happen there, but we'll see. It's interesting. It really is. It's unfortunate more than anything because Ness Mendoza says that he thinks that Kovalev may have gone into a depression after Ward. Um, and he said, in his opinion, he felt that Kovalev won the fights against, well, the first fight against
Well,
Ward, not the second
look,
fight.
I scored it. I think I live blogged that fight, and I think I had Kovalev winning that first fight, but it was a very close fight. It was one of those fights where we were like, oh, okay, like couldn't really argue.
Hmm.
Okay, I accept it.
Right.
They were very close rounds.
Yeah.
Um, so you could be like, yeah, okay. Wasn't one of those.
Yeah.
It wasn't a robbery or anything like that. And but then the second fight, Ward made adjustments, and
Hmm.
he came in and he took it to Kovalev.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if you look at um, if you look at the, like you said, the adjustments that were made in that fight for the second fight, it looked like the superior fighter was now showing himself to be superior in the second fight, where
Mhm.
early, like if you did score the fight for Kovalev, you basically scored it that way largely on the strength of the early knockdown. But in the second half of the fight, it was clear that that Ward had already proven himself to, I think, to be the better fighter. So I
Right.
think that's one of the people tend to look at it that way. It's almost kind of like the a little bit like the Orlando Salido Lomachenko fight early
Mhm.
on.
Right.
Salido had it under control, but later in the fight, it was really just kind of like a walk away for Lomachenko. But the way the scoring is set up, he ended up getting, taking that L. But um, after the fight, I think everyone knew that Lomachenko was still the better fighter. So I think that's kind of what we saw with the first Ward Kovalev fight. But Andrew Coda says, do you guys think that Canelo can take Kovalev's punches if they were to fight? He says, I think that Canelo has a great chin.
Yeah, I agree.
Uh, I think Canelo has a fantastic chin,
Yeah.
um, thick neck, you know, thick legs, thick, calves, which is usually what'll say the type of chin and ability to absorb a punch that you'll see with guys. Um, Big, wide head, and I've seen him cracked. The first time I ever saw Canelo stunned was against Miguel Cotto's older brother, Jose Miguel Cotto. Early in Canelo's career, he got caught flush right on the chin with a left hook, and he went back into the ropes. And you could look in his face and see he was truly buzzed. And but what I noticed was how quickly he recovered,
Mhm.
and that's usually what tells me about a fighter's chin. So,
Right.
um,
I
you
mean,
know,
look, Triple G cracked him.
yeah,
Danny
yeah,
Jacobs hit him flush, and
yeah.
Canelo took it and just kept coming forward.
Yeah. Yeah, he has a great chin. He
He
has a
has
great
excellent
chin.
chin.
He's a hell of a fighter. He
Yeah.
really is. He really is. He really is. I mean, it's just unfortunately how good of a fighter he is gets lost in the garbage that's going around,
Right.
and a lot of that is not even of his doing. It's his team and the network and all of that sort of thing. So, but yes, he's a fantastic fighter. All right. So let's move on a little bit. We talked to the chat a little bit there. Now, this week coming up in boxing is, I'm gonna be honest, not all that fantastic.
But
It's not.
it's been fantastic.
It's right. So
So, it's like a
we're
little bit of a
cool.
lull, you
We're
know?
cool. We're
It's been
cool.
pretty fantastic.
Yeah, it's fine that this is not a oh my god week.
Right.
Adam Kalnacki against Chris Arreola is probably the best fight I'm pretty confident in saying that's the best fight of the weekend.
Still entertaining fight.
Yeah, yeah, it could be a good fight. I think Kaneki blows him out, but we'll talk about that a little bit. Marcus Brown against Jean Pascal. I really have no idea why that fight's taking place, but it is.
Brown's gonna crush him.
Yeah, WBA interim light heavyweight title. Brown's belt is on the line there. And then you also have Michael Conlon taking on Diego Alberto Ruiz. So those are the three fights of, I would say, any level
Mhm.
of interest. I think we both believe that the Marcus Brown Jean Pascal fight is just absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, that shouldn't be happening. That that shouldn't be happening, but it is.
I mean,
And
I was at it's so interesting, right? I was at the Brown Jack fight
yeah,
on
woof,
the,
woof.
Pacquiao Broner
Oh
card.
my god,
I was
oh my
there.
god. I have been watching boxing.
Yeah.
Was it 1981? Since 1981.
It looked like wrestling. Like when they
I've
have those cage
n-
matches and the
I
guys got
Oh,
the
it's
blood.
worse than that. I've seen plenty of wrestling matches, and I've seen plenty of cuts on the forehead in wrestling
Right.
matches. I've never in my life
So,
seen a cut like that.
I took a picture because I was ringside for that, and I was live blogging Pacquiao Broner, and in between fights, they were feverishly scrubbing the mat
I
for
I
Pacquiao
I,
Broner because
I know.
it was just filled with blood. So they
It's
were just feverishly off camera, just grinding on that mat to get all that blood off that mat. But I was also at and I don't know if this was Pascal's last fight or he's must have fought since then when he beat LB Ali,
mhm.
right? That was in Florida and I saw that was Ortiz fought on that show too. That was a PBC Fox show. Small show, but he
Yeah.
he wasn't supposed to win that fight.
Yeah, he's fought twice since then. He
Right.
fought Steve Bossy, who is the former hockey player and also former mixed martial artist. Got famously knocked out, like one of the nastiest knockouts I've seen in UFC history. He was a recipient of that. And then Jean Pascal also lost Went 12 rounds with Dimitri Bivol. I mean, he one judge gave him like 3 rounds.
Right.
I don't know how that happened, but he did. But
So,
yeah, lost that.
all
So
right. So yeah, that fight's happening. Brown should have no issue with that fight.
yeah, I don't think he'll have any
I don't
problem.
think
I
it's
mean,
gonna go. I don't think it's gonna go to distance.
I don't think so either. But here's the thing: like Pascal's pretty tough,
Yeah, but he's
but
sedentary. He's gonna stay right in front of him.
yeah, he's gonna stay right in front of him. And I also think that hopefully his corner will stop the fight if
Right.
it's But Pascal's tough, man. I mean,
Yeah, but
he's only been stopped twice and both times with Kovalev.
right.
So
I think it's just.
um
I think it's just his better days are behind him.
oh, absolutely. No, when I say tough, I don't
Yeah.
mean like tough to beat. I mean like tough can take a beating.
Hmm.
So so and
Yeah.
unfortunately,
Hopefully, he doesn't take one. But
yeah,
yeah.
I would prefer them tap out for him basically. Um but I don't know. I mean, I would love to see what you guys think about which fight, if out of all of the fights this weekend, if you guys had to pick which is the one you feel like is the one you just I don't want to miss this one. If because you're boxing heads and you're gonna watch something. So which is the one you just wouldn't miss? Andrew Coda says, why doesn't Brown why doesn't Marcus Brown want to fight Bivol for the real belt or a Gvozdyk? Now Brown is a PBC guy. I'm correct if I'm
Hmm.
not mistaken, right?
Hmm.
And Bivol is the zone.
But
Now,
he's with main events,
right,
so
right. So it could happen. It could
it
happen.
could happen.
It could
It could
happen.
happen.
Yeah. I mean, and
Um,
it would, to be
and
honest, for
Vodzik is with Top Rank.
yes,
So and they have Better Biev and um uh they have I'm missing the other champion. They have Vodzik, they have Better Biev, and who's it?
for we're talking about light heavy, right?
I'm blanking.
Um, um, it's well, that's it. That this is Kovalev. Kovalev, Bertabiev, Vozdik, and
Right, but
Dmitry Bivol.
Kovalev is with main events, but he fought on that last Top Rank show.
Hmm.
Right? So, I don't know. I mean, yeah, so that's it. So, I mean, I don't really know. Yeah, maybe he's in no man's land.
Yeah, I mean, Marcus Brown is supposedly obviously he's the interim WBC interim champion. So Vosdick is the one who holds the actual title there. So that's the fight, right, that you would think would be made. But then Brown is also the number one contender for the WBA title as well. So he's the interim champion and I believe the WBC interim champion. And
Mhm.
then he's the number one contender for the WBC title. So, no, I'm sorry, he's the WBA interim champion, and he's the number one contender for the WBC title.
Right.
So, um,
Either way, neither fighter's with PBC.
neither fighters with PBC, and
Hence why he's fighting Pascal.
yes, yes, which
Because
is
Bivol's out there looking for an opponent.
yes, Bivol's literally campaigning for opponents right now.
Somebody fight me.
He wants Canelo, and
I had somebody fight him.
yeah, yeah, Trent Broadhurst.
2 minutes and 59 seconds.
Yeah, it's pretty nasty. It's pretty
But
nasty.
Monaco was beautiful.
Yeah, yeah. It's pretty nasty.
Yeah.
It was pretty nasty. But yeah, Bivol
But
Bivol is
he's been running through people.
yeah, Bivol is like if I had to give you the names of like the five most underrated fighters in the world, in my opinion, Bivol and Jose Ramirez would be like right there at the top.
Right.
I think those two guys are fantastic fighters. Unfortunately, they don't have the type of personalities that really pop. I think Demetrius Boo Boo Andrade is on that top five list for sure of
Right.
underrated guys. But
Absolutely.
then again, we're talking about guys who don't jump out at you with this personality or what have you that I think that Regis Prograis is on that list. I think people who really, really know the sport know how
Mhm.
good Prograis is.
Well, he's gonna fight Josh Taylor, so you know
Yeah,
what? He's either gonna win or he's gonna lose.
yeah,
If he
yeah.
wins, if he wins, you can argue that, okay, now he's gonna go fight Jose Ramirez, and we're gonna have a unified champion.
Yeah. I mean, I think he's that.
But Josh Taylor might be one of the most underrated too.
Yeah, I was thinking him, but what I would probably say is and my other the fifth guy would be Inui. Um,
Yeah, but
just in the United,
he's picking
he's
up,
picking a major
steam.
steam.
Yeah.
But in the United States, there's a size bias thing, and if you're under featherweight, yeah, nobody's gonna pay attention. Nobody's
Right.
gonna pay attention. It's unfortunate because Inui might be the best fighter in the world. He might
Mhm.
be like
Maybe.
he might be the pound
Yeah,
for
I
pound
mean,
best
he
fighter in
might
the world.
be just like when Chocolatito was.
Yeah, he might be. I mean, but Inui, man, Inui's knocking guys out in ways that I can't remember. Maybe El Finito
I was
is
just gonna say
the
that. I was just gonna say that.
yeah, maybe is the only time I can
Ricardo
ever
Torres.
remember somebody that size
Ricardo
with
Torres.
these kinds of knockouts. Whew.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, if you guys are not up on Inui, you should just if you haven't seen him fight live, YouTube him.
Or is
And
it Inoue?
I usually hear Inui, but I'm not sure. I've heard Inui, so I don't know if that's maybe because I don't know. I haven't heard um an announcer from from his part of the world and
Right,
now say
from
his name,
Japan.
but
Yeah.
yeah, I haven't seen that.
I'm
But
just asking. I hear you.
I'm not sure. Have you heard it pronounced differently?
I think I heard, like, Inoue,
Okay,
but,
okay.
I'm gonna find out.
I love to get the correct pronunciation of a fighter's name because I remember I was saying Rigondeaux
Mhm.
for a long time, but
So was everybody.
it's not, it's Rigondeaux,
I know, but everybody was saying Rigondeaux.
right? So as I like to make a point of saying guys' names right. Uh, you
Right,
know, with a last name like Mazik, I'm used to people not saying my name right. So
right. Well, you just said Gvozdyk, so, I mean,
yeah, well, and I
Gvozdyk.
like the way you kind of slid that in,
Well, I
just
mean,
you know,
just not gonna say Gvozdyk because you say it.
you should.
Alright.
I thought we were a team.
Inoue.
I
Or
said
Anui, whatever you
Inui.
Anui,
That's what
yeah.
I said. That's what
I'm
I
sorry,
said.
Anui.
If
Okay,
you're
well,
gonna say the wrong thing,
we
say
got
it right.
maybe someone in the chat knows.
If
Well,
you're gonna
actually,
say the
how would
wrong
we know? We wouldn't even know if because
no,
we wouldn't be here.
somebody would write it phonetically here for
Right,
you
if they know it. It would
if
be
they know.
helpful for us, but he's one hell of
Yeah,
a puncher. Big
he
puncher.
is. He is a heck of a puncher. Um, see, Ness Mendoza says, I am a fan of your segment in Bleacher. Thank you, Ness. Ness went back with me to Bleacher Report days. Appreciate that, sir. I appreciate that. Andrew Cota says that uh
Peter Khan knows nothing.
yeah, well that's a constant in the chat. But Ness Mendoza says it's in a way, I think. Or I don't know. He spells it Inowe. So I don't know if that's in a way or in a we.
Maybe it's
I,
Inoue. Maybe he's saying it like that.
it might be in a we.
Inoue. Could be right.
Yeah, might be.
Okay. We're gonna find out.
We're gonna find out.
Yeah, we're gonna find out.
And Andrew Coda says that NOE or NOE versus Luis Neri would be great for the division. I do think that would be fantastic for the division. My only concern about that fight for Neri is that Neri takes a lot of shots.
Mm,
Um, but he's a take two to get one, to give one kind of guy, and he wears you down. That's what he did to Juan Carlos Piano. But
mhm.
I'm just not sure if anybody can fight Inui or Inoue that way. I just I don't know. You got to see. You got to wait to see because you really don't know how a guy's going to take another guy's punch until they're in the ring.
Right.
But whoo, I see. I have no size.
Heavy-handed.
I have no
Heavy-handed.
size bias. I just like
Right.
boxing, so I
Right.
don't care. They could be like 57 pounds as long
Right.
as they're healthy.
Right.
So all right, let's dip again. Let's talk about Gervonta.
Mhm.
Um, What's next for Gervonta? I actually just wrote a piece on Forbes about Gervonta, and I'm going to give you guys the headline of it. So if you want to look it up, but I said the numbers suggest that Gervonta Davis's appeal is rising, and he is boxing's next pay-per-view attraction. I pulled on some data from Peter and I's friends at Listen First,
Mm.
and they gave me some really solid data on social media interactions and impressions. Gervonta was a major thing happening before the fight, during the fight, and even after. And they actually even offered me a point of comparison. So check this out.
Did you publish it today or this
I
week?
did. I
Yeah.
think it was yeah, I think it might have been
Listen,
yesterday.
listen first. Just for those like you mentioned, it's a digital metrics platform.
Mhm.
And it's excellent information,
Excellent
like
information.
irrefutable.
Yep.
Which
It I
puts,
mean,
like you said, like you're going to put it into context right now. So I'm excited to hear the comparison. I didn't read your story.
it was cool because they said as a point of comparison, there were 69,000.4 tweets using the handle Manny Pacquiao between July 19th and 22nd of 2019 in the 4 days around his Keith Thurman fight. Gervonta drew 38,000 um 38,000 tweets mentioning his handle during the same time frame surrounding his fight
Right.
with Ricardo Nunez.
Right.
So as they say, Gervonta isn't attracting Pacquiao levels of interest yet, but considering how much more well known Pacquiao is,
Right.
it's clear that Gervonta
Well,
has a very impressive social footprint. Also,
absolutely.
he was fighting Ricardo
I
Nunez,
was just going to say
and
that.
Manny Pacquiao was fighting Keith Thurman.
Right.
So,
The level of the promotion and the machine behind it wasn't
mhm,
10% of what went behind his most recent show
absolutely. I mean, Gervonta,
from a global perspective.
for sure, for sure. I mean,
Manny has a nation behind him.
Manny has a nation behind him. Gervonta's got Baltimore.
Right.
So it's really a credit to Gervonta because he's got 1.7 million followers on Instagram, 99,000 followers on Facebook, and 196 followers on Twitter, and he's not even 25 yet. So this guy is he's I think he is the next pay-per-view guy. I think he
I
is.
mean, listen, I know you're a big fan, and I like Gervonta, and he very well might be the next pay per view guy. I'm actually texting with his manager right now, and I'm trying to find out anything I could find out about what's next. But
Right.
but he look, we need to see him fight the toughest guys. And you had alluded to this earlier.
Mhm.
You threw out some names, but we need to we need look, he might be the next big thing, right?
Mhm.
And other than from a frame of reference, other than Pedraza, right? Who
Mhm.
we could say, okay, was a world champion,
Right.
high level guy. I mean, I understand he's devastatingly beating who's put in front of him.
Mhm.
Although Fonseca gave him a bit of a fight, but
Mhm.
Gervonta was, arguably out of shape, came in heavy. But we just, I don't think we're doubting him because
Mhm.
we're not doubting him, but we just want to see him start to fight those guys. And I think they're trying to figure out how to set that table
Mhm.
because he's also in a division in which his promoter and his promoter's ally don't control necessarily.
Mhm. Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like if I had to choose between and obviously there's more choices out there than this, but I think these are the three guys that and you could throw in a fourth that if these were the next opponent for Javante, I think nobody would really be able to, to have a complaint. If he fights Leo Santa Cruz,
mhm.
Gary Russell Jr., Tevin Farmer, or Jamal Herring, or Miguel Burkelt, which is the least
Okay,
likely because
but
we're outside of
right,
the, you
right,
know,
but
but if he was to fight either of those guys, I think people would be fine with it. Um, the Tevin Farmer fight seems to be the one that
yeah,
is it's going to happen. That's where the conversation is trending.
mhm,
Um, Tevin Farmer was getting interviewed in the ring after he beat Frenois on the same night that Javante knocked out Ricardo Nunez, and he's talking, about Javante as well. But everybody is taking shots, saying Floyd's controlling your career. Tell Floyd to let you fight. Gary Russell Jr. said the same thing 2 months ago. But what that tells me is here's the thing: fighters don't generally call out nobodies.
mhm.
They call out people who are on their level or people who are above their level,
They know they're all gonna make a lot of money too.
and they're gonna make because he's the guy to make the money to make the
Right,
money with.
right, right.
So You know,
Hey, listen, he's the guy because he's either the best or he's the guy because he's got the big following, and beating him would make you a big name. So there's many reasons, but there's no doubt that his star is on the rise.
hmm
Burchelt and Herring won't happen for the same reasons that all the
same
other
reason
fights we talk
Spence
about
and
won't happen.
Crawford.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's not going to happen. Santa Cruz, I mean, be a heck of a fight. I'd like to see that, but I think that Farmer is probably the path, like you said earlier, the path of least resistance. With DeBella and Matchroom,
hmm
and I think that's actually an interesting fight for Davis because Farmer, being uh, a good defensive fighter that he
So
is,
slick. Yeah.
could make this. We don't know if he can take Davis's power, but it'll make it an intriguing fight.
Yeah. I think that's it, it really actually surprises me, right? That's the fight that they would be embracing. Um, if I were running Tank's career and I was trying to get a high, a highly visible fight with a an attractive opponent that I felt that Davis matched up well against, it would be Santa Cruz. I would first of all, Santa Cruz has to come up to fight him.
Mhm.
Second of all, Santa Cruz isn't a extremely slick fighter even at his weight class. And he's not even a big puncher at his weight class. He's a cumulative punishment kind of a guy. So
Right,
you're a cumulative punishment kind of guy coming up a weight, fighting a guy who is probably fast and almost certainly faster than you and
right,
who hits like a ton of bricks.
right.
you know and then you're bringing in the Mexican boxing community because you have Santa Cruz. I think honestly that would that's the
Yeah,
fight to me that makes the
but
most sense.
but Brian, with all things being equal,
Mhm.
right? Let's just stay like out of the 130s, out of the
Mhm.
130 pounders, because then we can say, oh, well, 35 pounders should come down. You know what I mean? And then we can name some 35 pounders that should come down to meet them at 30. I mean, looking at the landscape of the
Mhm.
130-pound division, we already know Herring and Burchell aren't going to be an option.
Mhm.
Well, Farmer's the other guy.
Right, absolutely,
And
but
and that's probably what's going to happen.
I believe that's what I believe that's going to happen too. But I only brung Gary Russell and Santa Cruz into the mix because both of them have mentioned Gervonta.
Mhm.
Both of them had talked
Yeah.
about
For
being
their own
willing
selfish
to,
purposes.
yeah, being willing to come up to
Right.
130. Especially Santa Cruz. I can easily see that being because he's a taller 126 anyway. So it may be cutting down to 126 is tougher for him anyway. So
Mhm.
staying at 130 might feel even more natural.
Right.
But I think that the Tevin Farmer fight is very interesting because he is so good defensively. And we really haven't seen Gervonta in there against people who could make him miss. So that's to me is going to be pretty interesting if it does happen. The fact that Floyd is mentioning his name, I think, is fairly positive, or fairly a good sign, pretty good sign that it may be actually happening. Floyd seems to be taking Floyd the promoter with Gervonta is interesting to watch, right? Because it's different. It's like a different kind of a persona than it is when he's promoting himself. So I find the dynamic pretty interesting. Like he's more polite. He's more just seems like he's far more soft spoken as the promoter for Gervonta than he is for himself. So it's funny.
Mhm.
It's kind of weird. Um, but let's look at what we're talking about here in the chat. Um,
Well, yeah, what does everyone else think?
Low key New York says Tank needs to fight Farmer or he needs to move up. Um, there are some people that don't dig Tank that much here. Ness Mendoza says Tank needs to fight a legit fighter. He says, don't get me wrong, Tank is good, but we need to see him fight a true legit fighter. Um, he says Tank versus Burns. I think he's talking about Ricky Burns. I think that would be Ricky Burns just getting pummeled. I don't think that Ricky Burns has enough of a punch, and I don't think that he matches up well from a speed standpoint with Gervonta. I don't think that's especially, and Ricky Burns, I think, is compromised. He's been in a lot of
Right.
tough fights. I don't think he's the same guy anymore anyway. So, and he'd have to come up anyway. Gervonta would have to come up to fight him too. That's a lot going on there. So I don't know about that one. Rodolph Vargas is at least I think he's still dangerous to Canelo. Oh, he's talking about Kovalev. Um, and see, Low-Key New York says that he thinks that the Farmer fight is a grudge match and makes for a good build up for the fight. I definitely think that him and Gervonta seem to have a legitimate little legitimate heat between the two. So I think it could be interesting leading up to it. Um, but that's such a good fight, and Gervonta has such a it kind of a factor around him anyway.
Hmm.
I don't even think it needs all that much heat, especially for a fight at that weight class. It kind of is what it is on one hand, and Gervonta already is bringing in a certain following anyway. Um, yeah, I just think that's a really good fight. Just that, it's just a really good fight. So we'll see if it can happen. Um, you see, low key New York asked, can Cruz still make 126? Can
Right.
Santa Cruz still make? See, that's my thing, man. I don't
Yeah.
know if he can still
Okay.
make
But I
126
but I want to see him fight at 30 before,
first.
first. Like, I mean, there are fighters that even I manage that, that will move up in weight, and I want to see them fight at that weight maybe one or two times. It's a whole
Hmm.
different ball game. I
Yeah.
mean, even in that case, it's 4 pounds. It's different. Okay,
Hmm.
different than going from 40 to 47, right? Which is a much bigger
Yes.
jump. 26 to 30, not as big, but nonetheless, you've got guys at 30 that are squeezing into 30.
Yeah.
Whereas, yeah, maybe Santa Cruz can't make 26, but 30 is going to be a piece of cake. Whereas someone like Davis might be squeezing into 30.
Yeah. I think he might be. I think he
You know,
might be.
right.
Yeah.
So, he very well, and there's no doubt Davis probably will be a three division world champion, maybe 30, 35, and 40. I don't know if his height will let him go
Yeah.
beyond 40. But
Yeah.
anyway, we definitely want to see him in some competitive fights, or at least against the other guys
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
have the
For sure.
names to see if they're competitive.
Yeah. Definitely.
They might
I
not. They
would.
may not be competitive.
They may
He,
not be. He
he
may
might. He
blow
might blow
through.
them out. Yeah.
He might, but we need
But
to
we want to
find out.
see it. Yeah, I want to see it.
We need to find out. Okay. Now, last week, I think both of us agreed that the best card of the weekend was the Hooker Ramirez Farmer Frenois
Mhm.
card. And of course, Ramirez scored the 6th round TKO victory over Maurice Hooker. Um, what do you think should be next for Jose Ramirez?
I mean, I would love to see him continue in this unification. You
Hmm.
know, the question is, what's going to happen with Prograis and Taylor?
Hmm.
And I think that they're fighting close enough where he could sit back. And I think that from a promotional standpoint, that won't be a problem. So, I mean, I know if Prograis wins, there'll be no issue for Top Rank to do a deal with DeBella at all.
Hmm.
And if Taylor wins, I don't see any impediment with that happening either. So that could we can have I mean, look how long it took
Like
for,
that.
for, for Crawford to do it. And
Like,
now we're right back there.
like that. I was just
Oh,
thinking that.
oh, 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 oh. And don't underestimate that if things go sideways, that Crawford, who's with Top Rank, won't go back down to 140 and have a really big fight with Ramirez.
I mean, man, I don't think Crawford gets enough credit for just how much of a straight warrior he is. You know, like the dude, like this, he is an absolute gamer. Like he wants good fights. Like,
Mhm.
and I think like people might look at it and they may say, "Oh, well, what's preventing him from fighting Spence or whatever?" And obviously, that stuff is all out of his control, out of both of their control for the most part. And I think he's the type of guy you look at him, if it's up to him, he'd fight whoever. And the fact that he's willing, after fighting at 147 for a sustained amount of time, winning a title there, he's willing to drop down to 140 to take tough fights. These are not easy fights, but to take tough fights against guys like Ramirez and Prograis is really something. I actually heard that Ramirez said that he would take another defense in between the fight with the winner of Prograis Taylor. Now, of course, he has to win that fight,
Right.
but you would assume he wouldn't be fighting anyone who was, you know, that he would suspect to be a major
Right.
push for him. His mandatory is Josh Taylor. So I don't know what that would be.
Who's mandatory?
No, the number one contender for Jose Ramirez is Josh Taylor. So
But
uh,
Taylor's already world champion.
Ta- Taylor's a world champion in in IBF, right? But he's
Right.
the
So he
number.
can't. So no,
He can't be
can't be
anybody's
rating.
one
Right.
number one. He can't be anybody's
You can't even be in
mandatory,
the
but
other
he's a
ratings.
number.
You
Say
can't
it
be in the
again.
you can't be in the ratings. If you're a
Well,
world champion, you can't be in the ratings.
I don't know. Must be this must be.
If you're a world champion, you're removed from the other world ratings.
Well, okay. I'm looking at Box Live right now. He's listed as the number one contender of WBC title for the. I mean, in the WBC. So I'm not sure. Why, but he is obviously he's the IBF champion as well. But he's listed as the number one contender. So that must be incorrect. I'm not sure, but he it's clear as day. He is listed here as the number one
Yeah,
contender,
no. But when you're world champion, you're no longer
listed in the rankings for
you're taken
any
out.
belt. Yeah, honestly, and that I think that maybe is probably an issue here because I don't think that's anywhere in any other weight class that they have listed. Generally, it's just pretty on point. I've used them for a while as a source, but yeah, I think that is the only yeah, that's the only one like that because Inui or Inoue is the IBF champion, but he's a WBA interim champion, so he's the only other one that's listed in another with another governing body. So I don't know who would be the number one guy then, because number two, of course, listed here is Victor Postol, who has pretty much he's a former world champion at 140, lost his title to Terrence Crawford, I recall.
Right, right.
And he's also been knocked off by a couple of the other 140s. So then you have Pablo Cano, who just
Oh,
Pablo
Canelo.
Cesar Cano, he just
Yeah,
scored a upset victory over can't remember who that was. He stopped. He knocked the guy out. I can't remember who it was, but it was an upset victory.
yeah.
I can't remember who it was, but yeah. So I guess either of those guys could be next for Ramirez. It won't be Josh Taylor, obviously, but perhaps Postol or Kano. Um,
No, but
uh,
what I'm saying is that Ramirez might do nothing. I mean, Ramirez is basically now fighting twice a year.
hmm
So he fought in February in Fresno,
hmm
and then now he fought in July. So he's fighting twice a year. So what I'm saying is he very well might sit still and see what happens with Prograis Taylor and then move on to that fight.
Well, I heard him say I actually heard him say that he was going to take another fight first in between
Okay.
that.
Okay.
This was during his post fight
Hmm.
after the
Sure.
win over Hooker. So I don't know how that'll work out, but he said that he's going to take another fight. So I don't know who it'll be against or if his promoter will step in and say
Right.
no, you're not. But that was what came out of his mouth at
Okay.
that time. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. But I really wish that fight got more love than it got. I really do, because it was a fantastic fight. The card itself was constructed well, but as we saw, Gervonta has star power, and I think
Mm,
he pulled. And also, it was behind a paywall,
right.
so that was the other thing. So, um, Andrew Cota says Ramirez said he's going to have two title defenses on ESPN, then unify with Taylor or Regis Prograis. So I
Okay.
know I heard him say one fight. I don't know
Right.
about two, but I heard him say one. So we'll see what happens. Um,
Yeah, and maybe that's because maybe the winner of Prograis Taylor wanna maybe they want to get a defense in before going straight to unification. I'd go
Right.
right for the money.
Yeah. It's you know, yeah. So, and you said, well, what's next for Hooker? Low key New York says that um they said should he try his hand at a stacked 147 division. I don't think that unless he is having a really hard time making weight at 140, that's not something that I would do. I think the fight with Ramirez was very competitive.
It was,
Um,
remember I had it even on my scorecard. I had it
right,
47-47,
right.
you know, when going into that 6th round. So
And that was with a bogus knockdown in the first round.
bogus, and that's, yeah, bogus. Not otherwise, you could argue that I had Hooker maybe winning that fight.
Exactly.
So I mean, it was very, look, a split of a second.
Hmm.
That left hand it stunned him,
Yep.
and then Ramirez jumped right on him.
Hmm. Yeah. So I don't know what's next for Hooker. I would like to definitely see him take another fight at 140. I want to see where he is mentally.
Right.
Because that's kind of what shook me a bit about everything he said during his post-fight interview. Was sensible, made all the sense in the world from a human standpoint. All the things he said, but it also sounded like somebody who was very satisfied with where they were professionally.
I think he might just be a smarter, more cerebral guy, and
Yeah.
might look. He has 3 draws on his record.
Mm-hmm.
He has had bad nights.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think he's just being pragmatic. He just might be a pragmatic guy. And he might be thinking, okay, I didn't really get hurt. I was stunned. I was
Mm-hmm.
hurt enough for the referee to jump in and stop it, but
Mm-hmm.
I'm fine. And so I just took a loss against maybe the best 140 pounder in the world and was the better man that night. I'm going to come back and I'm going to compete and I might win a world title again. I mean, look what he did to a guy like Salcedo, who
Yeah.
was being built up to be the guy, right?
Yeah.
I mean, he demolished him.
Yeah.
So,
His he works behind his jab as well as any guy in the weight class. I would say almost as well as any guy in the weight region. But I just always have to, it depends. I have to see how guys come back from this kind of a defeat, and I like to see him in a fight at 140
right.
against a decent opponent before I'd say, okay, yeah, I think he's ready to get back into the championship mix. Because, boxing and combat sports is losing in combat sports is different than losing in any other type of sport. You know, you get beat by 45 points in a in a basketball game makes you feel bad, but it don't really change you,
Right.
as a person. Sometimes a fight like that can change you. It depends. So, but we won't know that until we see him back in the ring again. So, um, Andrew Cota says that he'd like to see Maurice Hooker against Pablo Cesar Cano. I think that's a fight that makes sense. I think Hooker outboxes him all day, but Cano has a fantastic chin. He has insane cardio, and he can punch.
Right.
So, uh, you know, Hooker's got to be ready. He's got to pack a lunch because it's gonna be
Right.
it's
Right.
gonna be a long one. It's gonna be a long one. So, yeah, I don't know. We'll see. All right, so let's jump here to let's talk about Joshua Ruiz rematch, right? We know what's happening. We
Hmm.
don't know where yet. Eddie Hearn was talking today and saying that he's not 100% sure, but he's pretty sure that the fight is not going to happen in the United States. I
Right.
actually just wrote up something about this too right before we went on. And essentially, I talked about how I felt that it would be there's some benefits for him to fight him again in the United States, but I totally understand him not going that route. Um, I remember after the fight, Joshua said this was like his first interview or whatever. He said something in him wants to fight him in the United States again so that when he wins or if he wins the rematch, he will have beaten him in the same venue or the same site where he lost. I think that the boxing community might give him more respect for that or whatever. Um, but I also understand the zone and Matchroom saying, we're still the A side.
Hmm.
he had a automatic rematch clause, and part of that is us having it on our own home turf, and we're not going to give that back.
So, I mean, it's really simple.
Hmm.
When you give somebody an optional title shot,
Hmm.
non-mandatory,
Right.
these things are outlined.
Yep.
So the word rematch is not in there. It's just options.
Hmm.
So you could take it how you want it. They
Hmm.
have X amount of days, could be 45 days to exercise that option.
Okay.
We call it a rematch.
Hmm.
That's because that's what it is. It's a rematch. So uh they're exercise they probably got more than one option on Ruiz.
Hmm.
Okay. And they're exercising their option. And in there, the promoter of the event is still Matchroom,
Right.
who will dictate where the fight takes place.
Hmm.
And the purse is usually predetermined too.
Yep.
If you should win, you will have a purse of XYZ attached to that first option.
Just that simple.
And that is why what Eddie Hearn's doing is just figuring out what he wants to do for his own purposes, as
Hmm.
any promoter would. Where does he want it? He already knows it's going to be in DAZN in the United States. It'll be on Sky in the UK. And I heard them talk about Cardiff, okay,
Yes.
where Joshua was fought before. So it doesn't matter what Andy Ruiz says. I'm not fighting there. Well, okay. Well, you really don't have a choice.
Yeah. It was really. I'm listening to him say that, and I'm like,
It doesn't matter.
dude,
It
it
doesn't.
doesn't.
And then Leonard Ellerby, Andy, don't go there. It's not up. It's just not up to them.
No.
So
It's
so dump the titles. Don't fight them, and Joshua will fight somebody else. I mean,
right.
listen. Props to Ruiz.
Yeah.
I mean, he knocked him out, stopped him. He took his heart. I mean, it was great, right?
Hmm.
Well, Joshua gets to exercise the option. He's wants the rematch. His promoter, who gave you the opportunity, therefore you got the opportunity and you signed with those options.
Hmm.
You'll fight where, when, and for how much. It's just it's not his choice, and it's great. I love it when I hear fans talk. Well, now he doesn't hold any cards.
No.
He has the belt, but he
No.
holds zero cards.
He has zero cards. It's the A side
Listen, I
is not even debatable.
I have I see these contracts every day.
Hmm.
And Ruiz is the champion, right? But Joshua still is the attraction.
Hmm.
They'll put 90,000 people or 70,000 people, whatever
However many it
the
holds.
capacity is in Cardiff. They're still going to be VADA tested. They're still going to be held to the same criteria that VADA holds people worldwide. Okay. It's not going to be an excuse or an issue. Just like Joshua made no excuses as
Right.
to what could have been done while he was in New York to make him feel that way. Whatever, he lost. He got stopped.
Yep.
You know what happened? He got hit. Because in the third round, when Ruiz was on the canvas, everybody's probably thinking, okay,
Yeah.
it's not going to be long now.
Right.
So, props to Ruiz. Excellent outcome. The rematch should be exciting. I'm one of those people that thinks he could do it again.
Yeah. I don't think that.
I
I mean,
know, I know. I'm just,
well,
you know,
it's not that I don't think he can. I do think he can. I think that the path to victory for Joshua is is working behind the jab and staying tall. I feel that he gave up his height and he allowed Ruiz's hand speed to be a bigger factor than it had to be because he essentially reduced himself
mhm,
down to the level every time he took shots. To me, he has to keep that fight at distance, and
right.
anytime it gets in close, he has to wrap him up. He has to wrap him up.
If he could make adjustments,
Mhm.
then he might stop Ruiz.
Yeah. Yeah,
If
I think if he makes adjustments, he
right,
stops him 7, 8 round.
but if Ruiz comes in there and is able to get those shots, I mean, the reason that I think that this was just such a weird thing is because Povetkin had the same type of success until he got caught,
Yeah.
and so maybe we should have looked at that a little closer.
Yeah. And similar style guys,
Right,
smaller heavyweights with fast
Povetkin, what?
hands.
Right. I mean, Ruiz faster. right?
Yeah,
And
faster. Yeah.
Ruiz might even have a better chin.
Mhm. Oh,
Um,
I think he does. I think he does
you
because
know,
he got cracked
right.
hard.
And
And it
younger, right, and
yeah,
younger.
yeah.
But he wasn't gonna be deterred, right?
Mhm.
But Povetkin was hitting Joshua. I mean, there was a blueprint there.
Yeah,
So, I mean, I'm looking forward to seeing that rematch.
yeah. I'm looking forward to it too.
But
I
it's
do
gotta
think
happen
Joshua
before the end
wins.
of the year. They got to announce it soon. It's gotta happen before the end of the year, and I think it's gonna be just gonna be a mega fight.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be a huge fight, um, everywhere, not just in the UK. I think it's
Mhm.
gonna be a big fight. But I do. I have Joshua winning the rematch, fighting a smarter, possibly more boring style, but I think he wins the rematch. Let's see what we got in the chat. Low-key New York says that Dillian White situation is really ugly. Yeah, it's a lot of moving parts to that.
Yeah.
Um, Ness Mendoza says Andy, in my opinion, will still dominate AJ. Coming from a KO was quite difficult. He's kind of leaning on that same thought process that I had with Maurice Hooker. I
Mhm.
think this one's a little bit different. Um, I'm One thing I'm a little bit concerned about is how ser- how is Andy Ruiz handling success? I wonder. I wonder. I
I
wonder how
mean,
he's. I
I don't
wonder how
know.
he's handling it.
I think
I've
he's I mean,
I've seen a lot.
I don't
Seen a
know.
lot of heavyweight. I've seen. I shouldn't say a lot of heavyweights, but I've seen heavyweights in the past pull these kinds of upsets, and in their rematch with the big name guy that they beat, show up not quite in the same mental and physical state that they were when they pulled the initial upset. So I want to see what that looks like
I think he's
for him.
motivated. I think he only knows one way. He's been fighting for so long.
Hmm.
I think he only knows one way.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I'm saying? This isn't just like he just like stepped into like he's from the amateurs to the pros to, I mean,
Hmm.
from the amateurs, the Olympics, the pros to getting this opportunity. Look, his only loss, honestly, was a controversial loss to Joe Parker in New
Hmm.
Zealand.
Right.
Okay. So, we got to give Ruiz the benefit of the doubt. And for what it's worth, even though it was a 45-year-old Holyfield, remember Evander told us,
Yeah.
he warned us.
Yeah.
It's like,
He
I would
said.
not fight him.
He said that guy. He said that guy can fight.
He said, I would not. He said, if that, because they sparred. And he
Yeah.
said, I wouldn't fight this guy.
Yeah.
You guys could actually watch that video.
Yes.
It's on the channel. And Evander was clear. This was before the fight, the week before the fight.
Yeah.
And even though he thought, like a lot of us, that Joshua was going to win, he's like, let me
Well,
tell you.
no, he didn't say that. Riddick said. Riddick told you that Joshua was going to win. Evander never picked Joshua.
Interesting.
He
I got to
never
go
picked.
back and look at my own video.
Yeah, he never picked Joshua. He never picked him. When you asked him that, he said this guy can fight. He
Yeah.
said he's fast. He said usually I can look at a guy's body and I can tell
Right.
what he can do.
Right.
He said, but
That was verbatim. That was very good.
yeah, I watched a lot.
That's good. Yeah,
So,
but to Nes Mendoza's point, Ruiz might even come in just that much more confident with an amplified game plan, building off of the success he had
mhm,
in the first fight, and Joshua might pull a Kovalev in the second Ward fight.
he
He
could.
might pull a Tyson in the second Holyfield fight. Might not have the answer. Might get
Well,
flustered.
except for the
I,
biting,
I,
but
huh?
except for the biting,
Right, I'm just saying flustered.
right? No, I got you.
Flustered. I mean, there are guys that come in and they don't have the answer, and
See,
they get flustered.
the difference, I think you meant, and you made this reference a little bit earlier. You were saying that Kovalev kind of has the bully thing, right?
Mhm,
And I feel like Mike had that same type of thing.
mhm.
I don't think that's who Joshua is.
I think he's passive aggressive in his bullying
Hmm.
in a
Okay.
way. You know what I mean? I think it's just part of his aura, and I think some of that was broken.
Hmm.
I think some of that, you don't have to be a bad bully, but in the
Hmm.
boxing where you could be a bully.
Yeah, I can
You can
dig it.
work off of brute force,
I can.
and if someone stands up to that and you don't have an answer, it's really, really hard to figure that out on the fly.
I can dig it, but I can. Here's the thing. I've seen
Uh-huh.
Joshua overcome adversity in the
Right.
ring before.
against a
Uh,
40-year-old Klitschko. Okay.
and he also got hurt by Dillian White in their first fight.
Right.
So I saw, and I mean, because he got dropped by
Mhm.
Klitschko. He was hurt.
Right. Klitschko didn't have enough to follow up. Ruiz does.
Yeah. Well,
And what
yeah.
I'm gonna say is what if he gets buzzed again?
Right.
Does he lose control? Because he
I
didn't get
don't.
knocked out, in my opinion, and I don't wanna say this way because I wanna be more sensitive.
Mhm.
Um, I don't wanna say like that he quit, but he quit.
Mhm.
I think, and look, I don't know. Maybe those rumors about him being knocked out in sparring, maybe it happened. Maybe he went into this fight not 100%. Maybe he was concussed. No
Mhm.
one's ever going to say that because there's so much liability, right?
Right.
But what if that's the truth? What
Mhm.
if he went in there concussed? What if he went in there? What if in spar? Look, things happen in sparring, and no one should be ashamed of getting dropped or knocked out in sparring. That's where you try things. It's where you take chances. And you know what? You also spar a hell of a lot more rounds in preparation of a fight than you actually fight in the fight.
Mhm.
So the probability of on having, even Floyd talked about having bad days in sparring
Yeah.
where guys got the best of him because it happens.
Yeah. I mean, if anybody's ever never seen the video before, you see a video of Greg Page dropping Mike Tyson
Well,
in spar.
and Oliver McCall.
Yeah.
So, it happens, right?
Mhm.
So what if he went in there and he wasn't 100%? And maybe 100, and he can't say that after the fight because there's so much at stake and so much liability that he can never come. And plus, if he said that, look, who knows who circulated that rumor,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? But the point is that that's a question mark still that I want to know, was Joshua 100%?
Yeah, was he? I mean, no one will ever know. Perhaps we'll know this long after he's retired. Somebody will, do a documentary or something. But
Right. But remember,
he's
those non-disclosures in
hmm
camp are they come with liquidated damages.
yeah,
And if you guys don't know what liquidated damages are, it's a set number, non-negotiable, doesn't go to this, doesn't go to that, you pay.
yeah,
And those liquidated damages are enough that no one's going to speak because you go into camp in those situations understanding your role as a sparring partner,
hmm
understanding that there's no cameras, no cell phones, no relaying information, nothing. You're getting paid to do a job. Hence why we saw that insanity with McGregor and Malignaggi. And
absolutely,
hence why we never saw the full video.
right. Yeah,
It
yeah.
probably exists,
Oh,
but
I'm sure it does.
they probably can't show it.
They can't. Yeah,
So,
so
they put those big liquidated damage numbers attached to it to just dissuade anybody from going there.
yeah, yeah. You don't want this smoke. So,
Right.
Low Key New York says that he said he's thinking already about Wilder Ruiz, which I think is
I
a
think Wilder knocks him
I
silly.
think it's a bad fight for Ruiz. I think
Yeah,
it's a
just the
bad fight.
size
The
and plus
size and the
Wilder,
power.
man, Wilder hits him, he's just gonna go.
Yeah, I think. I mean, I don't. I think AJ can really crack, but I think it's different with Wilder, and I think like you said, the size, just trying to get through that reach, is just going to be so. It's a problem. It's a problem, and Wilder's a savage, man. Like, if Ruiz hurts Wilder, he's got to knock him out. He's got to
Listen,
knock him out.
Wilder was hurt against Ortiz,
Yeah.
who I think is a bigger puncher than
And
Ruiz.
I think he was buzzed a couple times by Tyson Fury.
Right, and I think Br Brazil had hit him on the top of the head and
Hit
kinda
him on
buzzed
top
him
of the
for,
head,
like,
and he
5
backed up.
seconds, backed
He
up.
backed
So
up, yeah.
Deontay is tough, man.
He's
Deontay
tough,
is tough,
man.
and he just has that big punch. So I don't think I would respectfully disagree. If anyone were to think that Ruiz has a shot, I think, look, when we like to use the saying styles make fights,
Mhm.
I think that that's a bad
That's a
stylistic
very
matchup for
bad
Ruiz.
style, very bad.
So, but we'll see what happens,
We'll see
right?
what happens, but it's very bad, and I was looking at them sitting side by side, for the Pacquiao-Thurman fight,
Right, right,
and they started talking about the prospects of them fighting,
right,
and Wilder's looking at him like,
right.
"This wouldn't be good."
Yeah.
It's like,
Well, Wilder thinks that about anybody.
yeah, but this was even more like,
Right.
Now, I think Wilder knows that. I think he believes that he'll beat Tyson Fury in a rematch, but I think he knows that that guy was a real problem and more of a real problem than anybody he's ever fought.
Yeah,
Uh,
and if you see Fury fight in person,
mhm.
the reason he's a real problem is because he can literally be out of your punching range and punch you.
Yeah,
He doesn't even it's weird. It's
yeah,
really weird. He throws
mhm,
these weird it's different on television, but in person, you get a better idea of the fact that he throws punches without having to worry about getting hit.
yeah,
So all
and
he
then he
it's not
has
it's
fantastic reflexes.
right, so it's not a matter of him of whether or not he can hit you, it's a matter of if he can get the punches through the way he wants to.
Mhm,
Um, but, Wilder was the shorter man when
yeah,
they fought, which Wilder's never been in
except
a
for
fight.
Brazil, and he was only there for, like, 60 seconds.
Right. And Fury, like you said, I know we're kinda digressing here. I know but we'll get to that when that resurfaces, we'll be able to break that down again.
Yeah, yeah. I can't wait. Actually, I hope it happens. I'm really rooting for Wilder to beat Ortiz just so nothing curtails that
Right.
rematch. So, yeah, because low key New York does say who's going to win the rematch between Wilder or Ortiz. I definitely think Wilder wins. Um, Rarely do you see the older man win a rematch.
Right.
It's just
Right.
rare. Rarely do you see that happen. So usually the older
Unless
man.
unless unless your name's, and well, not a rematch, I was gonna say, unless your name's George Foreman, but that wasn't a rematch.
Yeah, yeah, the rematch usually the older guy usually does worse than he did in the first fight.
Right.
So, I say that to say Wilder probably knocks him out earlier. Okay, so now let's get into something that we didn't do last week that I wanted to do, but Peter wasn't here.
I know I
So
messed up last week. My
yeah, well,
apologies.
he
But, you held
sucks.
it down, you did great.
He sucks.
You
So
probably could do the
it's
whole thing without me anyway.
no, 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 no. We can't do it without you. We can't do it without you now. That won't work.
Then it would just be
So
the fight guy.
it will be the fight guy. It will be the fight guy. So we're gonna call this picture time with Peter. Now,
What?
picture time with Peter. So I want to put up a picture right now, and I
Oh,
want you to tell me the story of this
oh,
picture. All
I'm
right.
afraid. Yeah.
Bam.
Oh, me and DK.
That's right.
So that actual so for the people that are watching right now, I started in boxing, back in 1994, and I began working for Don King, in which I spent, a decade, during that, 94 forward. So some great years. That particular picture, was me and Don at the IBF convention in 1996 in Toronto.
Mm,
So, which was an interesting convention. Um, but nonetheless, I mean, that's a much younger version of me. Now, on the other side of Don is Mike Tyson,
mm,
who's not in the picture, who's not in that particular picture with me and Don. But on the other side of Don, at Don's table, is Mike. So, that's a 1996 Don King, Peter Kahn. I got the tuxedo on.
you do.
Um, uh, Back in the day, Bob Lee was the IBF president back then. Um, and I was 2 years into uh, what was a I guess if you could look at it as like a golden era in a sense.
Hmm.
At that time, Mike Tyson, Felix Trinidad, Terry Norris, Ricardo Lopez, Julio Cesar Chavez, all those guys were still fighting.
Hmm.
And there were some big fights, and that was in the era. We didn't have cell phones, we didn't have the internet, no social media. It was like a different world. You had to be present.
Hmm.
Hence, that picture was actually taken with film. You know what I mean? So,
Right.
it was definitely a great time in my. When I look back at it, for me, it was such an education. Such an education. Just I appreciate it more now than I probably did back then
Hmm.
because I really didn't understand. back then I was a kid. Now being an adult, and having been in this business for 25 years, I appreciate it. Appreciate it a lot more. As far as the experience, and the lessons I've learned along the way.
Yeah, Ness Mendoza is calling you Sir Khan now.
Well, I appreciate that, and hopefully, as we go here, we'll get some good stories out of some of these pictures. But
Yeah.
but
Who's the lady behind you? It looks like an older lady.
some woman that was excited to see Mike Tyson. That's like, was running to that side of the it was a big round table. And I remember, because, just like they do today, all the sanctioning bodies have their annual convention.
Mhm.
And that particular one I remember was Toronto.
Okay.
And it was it was a wild time because you had to be present. You
Mhm.
couldn't you couldn't just post something.
Mhm.
Like I look back and I'm like, man, if social media existed back then, I'd be like a little star. You know what I mean? Like with that
Yeah.
access,
Yeah.
because but it wouldn't have had but it, you wouldn't have had the mystique that time had,
Mm.
because no one was overexposed.
Mhm.
Like in order to see what Mike Tyson was doing, you had to be with him, or you had to wait for like KO magazine to come out,
Right. Right.
or
Right.
some special interview on television.
Yeah.
Because at the time there were no other outlets. It was
Mhm.
either print media or television, or you had to be there.
Yeah.
So, I and maybe we'll get some pictures of me and Mike, down the road here, and we can tell some stories about some of those fights. But I
For
spent
sure.
a lot of time around him back then, pre-face tattoo,
Right.
early mid
Pre
90s.
face tattoo.
All those fights, Peter McNeely, Buster Mathis Jr.,
Wait a
Bruce
minute. So
Seldon,
you took
Frank
a
Bruno.
what did he do? Take a what in his pants?
What?
Peter McNelly. What
Oh,
did he
yeah,
say?
yeah,
Take
a dump, a
no, it
dump.
wasn't a dump. It was something. It was
Yeah,
another. It was a more kiddie word.
you guys must have a big dump in your pants.
A big dump in your pants. Oh God.
But no, but
Oh,
that was that whole ride, which was McNeely, it was Buster Mathis Jr., Bruce Seldon, Frank Bruno, Holyfield. I
for
mean, and
sure.
that was just, and I was there for all of that. So it was and Trinidad, seeing Felix Trinidad win his world title at 19, I think it was, against Maurice
Yeah.
Blocker,
Yeah.
and then just that whole thing, and Chavez, losing to Frankie Randall.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, still just being around Chavez while he was still fighting.
Yeah.
Like you talked about, El Finito, saw so many of his fights
Yeah.
in person. Terry Norris. Um, Trying to think back who else were and I tell this story, and I'll find a picture, since we're doing this picture thing, I'll find a picture. But and I've told you this, that in the office,
Mhm.
I shared a cubicle with a one Abel Sanchez,
Ah. Yes. Yes.
who, many people only know as like the trainer of Triple G.
Right.
I mean, I know Abel's the guy that like hung a heavy bag in my garage. You know what I mean?
Right.
That went to work with me every day. And at the time, he was training Orlin Norris and Terry
Mhm.
Norris and Miguel Angel Gonzalez. And so there's a lot of good stories, a lot of history. But
For sure.
been around this for a minute.
Yeah, yeah, and that's why we like to talk boxing because it's so much history involved and so much perspective. Because a lot of times we think that we know uh, something about
Right.
a sport, or we think that we know something about an industry, but you only know it from your perspective. You know.
Yeah. And I've learned to also realize that like I respect everybody's opinion. You
Hmm.
know, I think there's a level. I wouldn't say that people aren't experts, right? I just
Hmm.
think it's based on experience.
Yeah.
Experience is the best form of expertise in something like this. That's why like I love watching behind the scenes things, or like movies or stories like on other sports, because I love getting a peek behind the curtain.
Hmm.
I feel like I get to live that in boxing and have lived that.
Yeah.
But
For sure.
I don't impose it on people,
Hmm.
because I don't want to diminish anyone else's opinion, because we all see the same things.
Right. Right.
I just have a different take, because I know a hell of a lot more than I even say on these videos.
Hmm.
Because if I did, then nobody would talk. Then I would,
Right.
I'd have no business.
Right. Well,
So
you can't have
it's a
businessless
fine
Peter.
line.
It's a fine line. It's a fine line. So, all right, people, I appreciate everybody watching, and I know that Peter does as well. Hopefully, you guys will be around. You'll this weekend. We'll talk Kalnacki Areola. We'll talk Brown Pascal for as long as it lasts and as much as we can stand to watch it. But we'll be back again on Wednesday of next week, and also be on the lookout for videos throughout the week. Just period. We'll break down this particular episode, and then we'll also have some separate stuff as well. So, like always, appreciate you watching as always. God bless and peace.